everyone, I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners. The Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass., Friday, August 25th, 2023 at 11:31. We have no executive session. Any public comments or announcements? All right. Need a motion for the consent agenda for July 20th minutes, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Abatements. So we have an abatement for 602 Main Street, and it's for the waste, I'm sorry, that's just a different one. This was a busted pipe at the pit on the road at the end of the driveway near their mailbox. The total amount is $4,324.91. The total amount requested is $1,033.32, which is priced at the tier 1. Is that right, tier 1 plus the base?
I didn't recompute the math, but I believe that was the intent.
I believe I double checked it and that was tier 1.
Tier 1 rate?
Yeah. I just don't know where I put it. Are you trying from there?
Barbara Kodak.
Yeah. I don't know where I put it.
142.
So yes, that is
Is it?
correct.
Good, you're faster than me. So then if we went with that plan, then the abatement amount would be $3,291.59?
You're looking to pay the $1,000, is that what it is?
Right.
Right.
The tier 1
Right.
number.
So that would be,
$3,291.59.
Correct. So that's the amount being requested for abatement. At the,
yes.
yes, no.
No, that's just tough one.
So if I can just
Yeah, please do.
provide a little input. So one thing that I'm a little sympathetic on this request is because if you look at the meter reading, we had to estimate on the December and April bills. This happens sometimes with meter pits. They don't always communicate. So had we been able to read, we may have been able to catch that leak sooner, which would have resulted in a lot less water loss. So I feel that because part of it was our equipment not communicating, that some consideration should be given to that.
So that was 1 quarter, it wasn't reading properly?
2 quarters.
Oh, December and
And
April?
And then we got an actual in June, which alerted us that there was a
Right.
continuous leak at the property, and we went out and addressed that on July 3rd.
So if the equipment could have read better.
If we had got a reading, you know, that December 22 bill, and the leak was apparent at that time, you know, we may have caught it at that point.
So it's a 50-50.
So,
Our gear and the pipe. got
Yeah.
that.
so that 1222 is 242,000 gallons?
That was an estimate based off of prior usage in similar quarters.
So 242 and the 252 are estimates.
Yes,
And then the 948 is,
the actual read. So it's 696,000 gallons that went through the meter between September of '22 and June of '23.
wow, that's a lot of water.
So what happened? Was there a leak on the other side of the meter?
It was on, well, your connection. I have a picture of it if you want to see it.
Outside of the meter?
It was
No.
on
It
the
was
house
in
side of the meter?
It was where the
Yeah.
meter was connected, the hose had loosened, and it was spraying out. Yeah, you have a picture of it, and I have one.
When you say it's the hose,
It's poly pipe, yeah. It had loosened enough so that it was spraying
So
out.
right next to the meter, was it?
Yeah.
So
It was in the
so
pit.
through the meter.
Yeah.
It was in the
Okay.
pit.
Well, in that case, you know, I would lean to the 1,033.32.
Yeah.
So if you like, I'll make a motion.
I'll move that we approve the requested amount of 1,033.32.
With an abatement amount of $3,291.59.
So that's the motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Maureen.
Oh, my God.
One discussion, after the fact, sorry. I had mentioned to Dan about that period of time afterwards, because there's gonna be an impact on your next bill as well from the same thing, so Dan was gonna.
Yeah, I want to say it was negligible after I ran the numbers.
Oh,
I think it was
okay.
like $20 or $30. So when we read the meter on June 21st, the leak had still persisted until the meter was changed on July 3rd.
All right.
So that little bit of usage during that period will be captured on the next bill.
Okay.
So that would be an additional $20 or $30
Yeah.
of consumption there.
And then this, whatever I'm owing you, does that get divided among 12 months or something? Or is
No.
that just a one-time?
It's typically a one-time payment. If it's an issue, Wellesley will work with you for a payment plan.
Okay.
We do that too,
All right,
yeah. So there's nothing, you don't have to worry and stress out about it, so,
okay,
Dr. Wellesley.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, it's,
yeah.
can I ask a question? Are a lot of the properties in Harwich still set up this way? I mean, is this
No,
like?
we do meter pits. It's actually required if the service is longer than 100 feet. So if the property's, more than 100 feet back,
Yeah.
essentially because the rolls of poly that we get are in general are 100 feet long, and we want to ensure that our line has no, breaks, connections,
Yeah.
couplings, so that there's, less of a chance of leaking. So for our protection, and ensuring that we don't have significant water loss unmetered, for long services, we require the meter pits.
So if the service was spraying and leaking like they say it was, is there some kind of alarm we can put in a pit that will
Even a moisture
activate it
alarm?
by water or
Um,
something?
There is
Like a,
another meter brand technology does have a pit sensor, but it's not offered by Neptune, which is the meter. We have, 10 plus thousand of them. There may be something that they could, on the private side, put in.
There is.
oh, okay. See that? Okay, get right into that. There you go.
That one, because I don't want this ever to happen to me.
Right.
Or anyone else.
Or
Right.
anyone?
This, I did some, Herb Bell is a plumber in Harwich, and you guys may have dealt with him. And he has put into his system this, it's called a smart water shutoff. And if there's a leak, it automatically shuts off the water and alerts, by Wi-Fi, alerts the people that it needs to be shut off. And I think it's a really valuable concept. I brought these here because I sent out a letter to all my customers that we've had too many properties where they've had awful leaks.
Yeah.
That costs, well, not only the water company, but thousands of dollars worth of damage. So I sent out a letter that basically said, we're anxious to stop this and just alert us and we'll come and install this type of feature in your, after your water meter. So it's a good program.
Yeah.
Maybe I can leave copies of this if you would like.
Yeah, I'd like,
Yeah.
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Is that
'cause
work
this
for
is- this-
sprinklers too?
When you read all the rigmarole back in here, the Flow Technologies, who developed it about 10 years ago, really anticipated ending these awful leaks and damages by installing these things. And Herb and I went out to a new property on Pleasant Street and evaluated it. And the only hitch in it all is that these things, totally installed, it's about $1,000 bucks. But anyway, I'm gonna leave this with, well, I'll leave
You
it.
can leave it there.
There are other brands,
And-
there's other brands too.
Huh?
There's a few brands
This is
out.
Moen.
Yeah, they've been out for a long time. They have water cop, they have all kinds of,
Other,
So you're familiar with that?
it's just one of those things where I'm encouraging my customers and my contacts to install it, because you may not remember this, but Barbara's cousin's up on Long Pond Drive. We walked into the house one day, and right behind the toilet, it had snapped.
Upstairs on the second floor.
Oh,
And it
no.
just soaked.
And we went to
Ruined
pick
the
up
whole
we
place.
went to pick up a package.
Oh, my God.
This was like in the winter, and there was water coming from, it was like, their house was ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they
It
have
would have
ones,
been worse, but we caught it.
they have ones that
That
have
point.
radio.
And it just alerted me. I've had a lot of
And this
customers.
just happened to Adam Lucas too, on South Street. So I'm thinking, there's a lot of water damage going on in Harwich.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
faulty, whatever.
In the world. I mean,
Yeah, it's.
not a unique
it's-
problem.
No, it's-
for Harwich.
Yeah, I know, it's
Yeah.
not your problem, I mean, but it's, you know, the toilet's running over, whatever. It's-
And it-
that's
this-
what-
Still
this
using
is-
water
Yeah.
that's not, you know, it's still using water that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
in good
Who
use,
wants to
you
waste
know.
water?
Yeah, if you want to
We're
leave that
for-
with Dan,
We're
that'd
for
be,
conservation, for sure.
Yeah, and plus it's, you know, Alan showed me the volumes of water being used, and in my mind, I'm sitting here going, how many times are people, being in the landscape business, are watering too much, you know, with
Wait,
the
yeah,
irrigation system?
we're addressing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Especially
that's-
this summer,
this
right?
system, you can put in the sensors out in the lawn,
Really?
and if
Oh.
it's too wet, it shuts down the irrigation
Oh, I
system.
understand
So
that.
it's a good program, and Herb uses it, but he can get it on his phone, and if it says it's too wet, it says, I'm gonna shut the irrigation off, and if it's and when it's too dry, it turns it back on. So, I think it's a good system. I'll leave
Yeah, if you
this-
gotta leave it with it, that'd be great. All right.
Yeah. I don't know, truthfully, I'm sure there are other, the only way I know about this is because Herb Bell has it, and he's happy with it. And then I looked it up, Moen, and, you know, they started off doing faucets, and new faucets for people. But then they bought this Flow Technologies company that developed this flow monitor. And I'm excited about it. I think it would be great.
You know, we're not against it, that's for sure. I mean, nothing worse, I mean, we're pumping 800 million gallons a year. Why waste it?
That's right.
Well, thank you, thanks for sharing that, appreciate it. All right.
So you contact Wellesley and she'll,
Okay.
Tell you
set
what
up
happens
something
next.
for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next
Are we
week-
set to go?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Unless you wanna, unless you wanna,
Unless you wanna
unless you wanna, this is really exciting meeting.
Thank you so much.
Unless you want to take my place.
come back next month.
Not yet.
Thank you.
All right, next we have 11 Lucy's Lane, and it seems as though that they would charge a base rate for their waste. Are you 11 Lucy's Lane? Okay. So 11 Lucy's Lane had a $75 base rate for their wastewater. The house is being constructed, and the line's not even hooked up yet. Is that right? The house is under construction.
It was under construction.
But the water's on, right?
That was the thing. They had installed the sewer in December, and we did not bill them the sewer base rate in the March for 2 quarters because they did not have a water service hooked up yet. Upon hooking up the water service to the new construction, we did activate the sewer account because now there's potable water and the availability of sewer is there. So they have a sewer service, they have water at the property. So my opinion.
Oh, so it is.
It's in.
All right. Oh, I didn't think it was actually hooked up yet.
Um,
Noreen?
thank you. So why isn't this showing, water usage?
Because they haven't used it yet, or they haven't used over 1,000 gallons. But like with a water service, if you don't use your water for the quarter,
Right,
you still have to
right,
pay the
right,
base
right.
rate because we've made that
Right.
service available.
So what's about the 1,000, you don't bill for 500 gallons?
We,
or-
no, we only read in 1,000 gallon increments.
Okay.
So the the
Okay,
first tier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did have water, like this bill says, oh, I see, August 14th.
So this is a legit, this is a basic fee.
Yes.
120.
Um,
I'll move to deny.
Wait, hold on a second, hold on a second, hold on.
All right.
Lorraine,
Okay, so when was their water connected?
The water meter was installed on March 29th.
Okay, all right, so they had 3 months
Yeah.
worth of use,
Plus, they
okay.
knew they could get another meter put in too. They should have,
What do you mean?
for, you know, if they're saying it's, you know, if they're for irrigation or anything.
No, I'm just talking about the sewer.
Oh, I know. They're saying what they're saying is, I think they're saying that because they didn't have a certificate of occupancy. But
But you can't get that without water and sewer, so.
Yeah,
yeah,
So what?
so,
That's not, in my
That's not-
opinion, justification for
Exactly.
abating it because they can't obtain a certificate of
if
occupancy
electricity,
without sewer.
Yeah.
if electricity's running to the place, they're gonna get charged for electricity even though they're not occupying it.
right,
So, I
yeah.
mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
The service is there. We put the service in, the service is there, and it's operable.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
Alan made a
But they're saying, all right, so this.
Hold on.
They are saying that on July 19th, they don't have a certificate of occupancy. You're saying that they should because on March 29th, their service was installed.
Not exactly.
Okay,
They do not have a certificate of occupancy. I don't know why,
Okay.
and to be blunt, I don't care why.
Right.
Because we have, installed it. They were saying, we don't believe we should pay this because we don't have an occupancy permit.
okay,
And I'm saying that you can't get an
Gotcha.
occupancy permit without being connected.
yeah, okay.
Well, people working there using,
Right,
using
exactly.
the facility.
Right.
All right, so we have a motion.
Second?
We have a motion tonight, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right. 141 Belmont. Single-family home located at 141 Belmont Road, West Harwich. Approximately 1,700 square foot residence. Total amount assessed, 1,037. Total request is 900. On February 16th, they discovered a pipe had burst in the home and flooded the ceiling area for 2 weeks. Home sustained significant damage on account number, water bill for $1,037.40 was issued and was paid in full. So you've already paid the bill? Okay. These, as hard as these are, when a pipe breaks, someone has to pay for the water. It's gone through the system. And typically, we don't abate those. What we have done is done a payment plan. We can set up a payment plan and make the payments easier, unless the board has a different opinion. Yeah.
Someone had suggested that we try for an abatement.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there are stipulations or we try to look at every case individually. We try not to do just a blanket, but in a situation like this, I feel terrible for you, I really do. But in a situation like this in February, there are enough pipe breaks, the bill just has to get paid. That's typically what we do. So, I'm sorry, but, so.
The definitely is always worth coming in.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
it was
right.
recommended to
We had
us.
checked on the house that day, but
Insurance.
unfortunately, it probably blew that night.
Yeah, when the cold snap, I'm sure you've seen a dozen of these.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yeah.
What is it, heat go off or?
The heat, the electricity went off in the town. on our
We
street,
didn't know at that time.
And it just burst it.
The
We were
heat
there
was
that day.
on when we went back to the home.
And And the insurance company doesn't handle these
No.
kind of costs, so.
No.
All the years, I've seen a lot of,
Oh, we're still battling with the insurance companies, a lot of damage, over
Don't get progressive.
$100,000 worth.
Oh,
do
my
you come
God.
down a lot in the winter?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we were
So
coming
it's-
down.
Down all
It's
the
worth
time, all
keeping
of
it
a
open
sudden,
then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're gonna call and get one of those water cups.
That's right, that's not really,
That's the most hilarious meeting right now.
I know.
Take you, and then you can call your plumber and get them right over there.
They should really market that better. I
Do you
mean,
have an
just-
alarm
Yeah.
system
Yeah.
in the house?
So we did not have an alarm. There was one existing, but when we bought the house, they
Oh, yeah.
scrapped it out. But we are going to that.
Like,
We're gonna get a water sensor alarm.
Yeah, in the basement,
Yeah.
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 something like that.
Because we, not so as not to drain the system every time,
Right.
because we just love, we're down all
Yeah.
winter long.
Right.
so everything to do is move down Pond.
I was just gonna say that.
When we retire.
Yeah, very
Still
soon,
working.
very soon. Thank you, I appreciate it. I mean,
Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Interesting.
Sorry about that.
Thanks
Have
again.
a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we need a motion for the abatement at 141 Belmont.
So moved to deny.
Deny, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I hate those.
No, it's like a double whammy.
I don't know why insurance does.
It is, it really is.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't believe the insurance company doesn't help out with something like that.
Yeah, it's, thing of it is, those winter, you know, ones that stay on the winter, I mean, they're brutal, they're headaches. You know,
Yeah.
but headaches for the homeowner.
All right, Dan, capital plan.
All right, so I had originally put this on just to kind of rehash the ongoing discussions, as I anticipate at some point in the near future, we're going to be starting to get asked for capital items for
You haven't
spring.
yet?
Not yet.
Because last year they would do August 31st, which would be next week,
Yeah.
so, just saying.
That said, in the last week, I have had another item come up that I would like to bring to the board's attention for consideration. As we've been going through the Phase 3 sewer project design, we took an inventory of the 700 water services that are in the service area. And we've identified, I want to say it's around 250, 260 old steel service lines that we would like to, or I would recommend, while the sewer contractor goes through, they replace those from the water main to the curb stop. So when we repave, we're not repaving over
Oh, yeah.
really old steel lines. That at a preliminary cost estimate is around $500,000. We're budgeting about $2,000 per service. That's a placeholder number. But I don't necessarily need a decision today, because I still am trying to work through whether we're going to include it in the contract as an ad alternate, and furthermore, identify funding sources. We don't have free cash certification, right? Isn't that
No.
in September?
So this project would be on the water side, it's not anything to do with wastewater.
It would be completed by the wastewater contractor,
Right.
but it would not be an SRF eligible component of the project, so it would need its own funding source.
Even though the water is the same
Yeah.
coming into the house, right?
We'd only be going from the street to the property line.
But if that street to the property line was not working, how can the wastewater work?
Well, it is working. They're just, they're
Well,
old steel
Where-
lines.
I mean, there's
where
others-
house is this first?
Yeah.
What area?
East Harwich.
Phase
East
3.
Harwich?
Phase 3, the East Harwich sewer area.
Uh-huh.
So we have
North of 39,
Church Street, places like that?
Church Street,
Right.
39, Pleasant
Pleasant
Bay,
Bay,
Bay Road, Standish
carpets,
Woods.
yeah.
Okay, older home.
Yeah, the whole,
Yeah.
what's the name of the development up on the left on 39?
Carlsbad.
Oh, yeah,
Uh-huh.
just past Bay Road.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
keep going up on the left, there's a big group of houses in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Wilma's Way,
Oh.
all those.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
okay.
So there's about 200, we went through and inventoried all 700 services for steel, plastic. There's about 250 left that need to be swapped over.
Noreen.
Oh,
Oh, no, hold on a second. We have like 5 questions going to Dan at one time.
right.
We know where the properties are. Okay. You started asking
I was making sure it was on the water side, not on the wastewater side.
Right.
Funding wise. Okay, so my next part of that question is there any possibility of reapplying to SRF for that portion of the project by the October date? Make it a little harder.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know, and
Um,
it's,
I'll have to
yeah,
do some more digging.
but that might help.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, but they wanted mostly, what was their emphasis
Well, I
this
know,
year?
we
PFAS?
wouldn't be able to, because we would have needed to have been listed on last year's
Right.
IUP.
Right,
And the contract has to be executed with the contractor by June 2024.
right,
So, we wouldn't be listed on, it would be this winter. Let me,
yeah, think about it, yeah, I realize it would be a year lag, but the actual physical work probably wouldn't be for a year anyway, but I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah.
One more thing for you to do, but,
yeah,
if we did get that money, we'd still have to pay for it,
yeah, I mean, we're still paying for it.
Right. just a little bit less.
Yeah, we may, and we wouldn't be eligible for like the 25% forgiveness on this because it's not a wastewater project. We would
Right.
probably get the 3.3%.
You almost have to work out if it's worth reapplying, because there's so
I'm
many
thinking.
charts in the form, and, GHD would have to have their piece in it, so
Right.
there's an add-on, so I don't know.
It'd
It's
probably
just-
eat up the 3%
Yeah,
savings we
yeah,
get.
just something, just another
Yeah.
wrinkle. Okay, I'm done.
Judith, you were asking about the
So-
water services working.
Well, in the sense, just to understand, maybe for future grant funding. So, to the house, the water and wastewater, it's flowing in together, correct? It's the
Well,
same,
No, well, it's a separate, they're
they're separate?
Yeah, they're separated.
They are separated.
You need to maintain either 10 feet of horizontal separation or 18 inches of vertical separation.
Of water going in to flush your toilets?
Yeah, the water service going into the property is supposed to be 10 feet away from the sewer service coming out.
No, I'm saying water going into the property is servicing drinking water as well as wastewater.
Hmm.
So for future grants, because the water going in, if there's a problem with water going in, forget the water going out, but water going in, would that be under both categories of drinking water and wastewater?
They would, either way, it would be separate, because there's the Clean Water Trust, and then
Yeah.
there's the Drinking
Wastewater
Water Trust. So
Okay.
they would be separate, they wouldn't be melded together, they would be always handled as a separate funding source from the state, because they reallocate the wastewater monies and the drinking water monies separately.
But a fix of that type in the future, let's say, because those pipes going in service both drinking water and wastewater?
Well, this
Maybe,
is-
I think the one thing we have working against us in that situation is that we don't have lead service lines. It's a blessing and a curse. All the money right now for water service replacement is going towards lead service line replacement, so I would
That's
be
good.
shocked if we
That's
were
good.
listed,
Yeah.
as the project.
I'm just thinking future expansion.
Always remember, the other two ever meet.
But they're still going in together.
But apart.
No, they're going in, it's the
Right.
same
Not
water
in the
going.
same trench.
No,
How
no,
can
the
they
water
not?
going into the house.
Yeah,
is
comes
the
out in the
same.
sewer line.
Not talking about coming out, I'm
Yeah,
talking about going
we're
in.
going in.
I say,
I'm
yeah,
talking about the maintenance of pipes going into the house. It's this,
that's what I'm saying. The two of them will never meet.
I don't want them to be.
What?
I'm not following either.
I know.
All right.
No, they'll meet.
Yeah.
All right, so Dan, let's get back on track.
So, this just came up this past week, just as we're, still unpacking everything. So I will look into other funding sources, potential for other funding sources, look at retained earnings, and try and come up with a recommendation to bring back to the board as for.
Where are you thinking about putting this in?
That's the
25?
sticky points, that we would have to do it, well, yeah. So timing is an issue. And so again, we have to have the contractor on board, contract executed by June 30th of 2024. We have to get authorization to bid from DEP, probably 2 months prior to that. So we're back now into April. So we can have the bids on the street for a couple weeks. We need to have the money appropriated prior to receiving authorization from DEP to bid the project. So, I had a couple thoughts. I know Noreen had attended a community meeting where people were discussing a citizen petition for a fall town meeting.
Judith was there as well.
So, in the event that there is a petition pulled for a fall town meeting, it would be my recommendation to put it on there so that the funding is secured and in place before we go into winter. If not, there's a couple ways that we could do it. I need to check with legal and make sure it's all well and good, but if we time the bid so that it went out in May, right around the time of town meeting.
May 24th.
We did a special town meeting article to fund this. It would be very tight, but it's not impossible that we may be able to pull it off in the spring as well. So I need to give it some more consideration as to timing, funding, and how to pull it all together. Whether it's a separate, distinct article, or if we wanted to increase a line item in our operating budget and fund a portion of the operating budget from retained earnings.
It would be under wastewater.
To be underwater.
Water.
Yeah.
You haven't put that on here?
No, I hadn't had a chance to put it on here yet, and I want to solidify the pricing and have a little more time to think about it, but.
Okay, so, round numbers, we had about 1.6 in retained earnings for water, so there was some money there, even though we have a lot of needs, 1.6 million. And not that I would want to slow things down, but why do you have to ask the DEP for permission to go out to bid?
Because they're state funds, DEP reviews, they want to make sure that, one, we have, title to the property.
But I'm saying if it's not SRF, what if it's just us?
If we did it as a standalone project,
Yeah,
yeah, we could incur higher costs. That's the concern, and I threw that out there in discussions
Okay.
with GHD. If we did it as a standalone project, one, we potentially wouldn't have the same contractor doing it. But if we could and did issue them a change order, it's not impossible that we may be dinged, for change order costs, because there are percentages and premiums built
Right.
into the change orders. So if we can get it done and into the project scope prior to going out to bid, it would potentially cost us less than funding it separately and doing it as a change order.
okay, I see that. So my last piece of that is, I'm just seeing, so it sounds like you're saying the bulk of Phase 3 wastewater project, the bid would be this winter-ish, no? This spring?
Spring.
Okay. So this wouldn't be part of it anyway, because we wouldn't have funding approval through town meeting.
Unless we have the special.
Unless it was the fall, yeah. But if it wasn't, then we'd have to rejuggle, because it would have to be separate in some fashion anyway. And why would it be necessary to have this portion, if the fall didn't work out, be for construction in the fall of '24? Because they'd be doing other construction first, probably like pump stations and other things. I mean, I'm wondering if they would even be on those roads until '25.
Right, and I guess I agree with all of that.
Okay.
And what it really boils down to is, can we include it in the original project scope,
Right,
or can't we? And if, and that's really gonna drive.
yeah. And so really, that comes down to if there's a fall town meeting or not.
Right.
Because you can't make, unless the other bid goes very late, and we don't want
Right.
that.
Or the other ones come in, one concept that we threw around was doing the first ad alternate as the water service crossover.
Okay.
So that if the bids come in lower than expected,
Oh, I
we
see.
can add alternate and include it within the project.
Even though you
scope.
don't have funding approval yet.
It would be, I think, well, it wouldn't be SRF eligible, but
Right.
as long as the total project cost doesn't exceed $50 million, the
Right.
water service replacement would be incidental and relative there to the sewer work because they have to dig through the water services. So I would think we could use the remaining funds available in the $50 million that was approved.
Oh, I see. We'd have to talk about that, because that's one's wastewater money
Right.
and one's water money, so, but we don't have to
Well, it's
go
all
into
tax
that
money.
today. You having fun?
I think we all are.
No, I'm like, that was my question, that's
We
good.
just learned a lot.
Okay. All right, so it's basically fall town, so if you're talking about what year to put it in, which was the original question,
As soon as possible.
Yeah,
so you mean like FY '25?
yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's gotta get done.
So would you
I
submit?
mean, in my opinion, if we're gonna pave the road, we
It's
should,
a house cleaning,
Yeah.
Yeah.
housekeeping item.
like when we did Depot Road a few
Right.
years back, we spent $300,000 replacing water services before they paved the road. We historically did that in tandem with DPW's road maintenance program, and our crew would go out and would be replacing them, you know.
This makes
And that's
good
also
sense.
something I'll discuss with Steve when he gets back next week, to see, maybe we can take half of these on.
So we would have to vote to add this project to our capital plan, for one thing, and then you would have to submit this as part of your capital projects for this go-round,
Yeah.
even though it's brand new, going to the first year.
If our crew thinks that we can do a significant amount of it, obviously I want to talk to them first, but that may be an option. We'll have to increase some expense line items in our budget to cover our costs as we do the work, paving, materials, things like that, but if we can do it, then that may be an option
You put in
too.
a 24-inch pipe in the tank, I can't see why you can't do these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's 250 of them, and it really boils down to how they're gonna manage the pavement of the project, so long as we can make sure we're staying ahead of them, but not getting behind with residential new services and other projects.
Just keep in mind too that whatever changes we make to the capital plan takes unanimous vote.
And I wouldn't ask today to make that motion, but
Yep. Next time you print this up, you can print it a little bit bigger so I can read it.
A question, maybe, Lori, if this were all to go before, if there were to be a special call meeting, this were to go before, is there a deadline, timeline that we have to vote by to?
It depends, it would depend on when the meeting is, you know, I mean, there will be a deadline, but we don't know it now,
Okay.
yeah.
moving on from there.
Yeah, the other thing is the funding in a fall meeting, but if it's retained earnings, we
Right.
can do it. Okay. I had one I wanted to suggest to add, but,
To the capital plan?
yeah.
Okay.
So, we keep talking about new well exploration, but it seems to me we should be talking about voting to add a plan for new well construction. And I don't know when that would be, but since they're proceeding with exploration, I don't know if it's 5 years out or whatever, but it doesn't have to be today, but it seems like we should get it on there.
I have so not on our currently adopted plan,
Right.
but in this one, I have a $3.5 million placeholder in '27 for the well 10 treatment plant upgrades, new well, and distribution system connection.
Is that the same thing?
Yes.
Great
Um,
minds think alike.
Again, and
But, I mean,
just-
it doesn't even say construction, I mean, how would somebody know that, you know?
well, I appreciate the
Constructive
the
criticism?
criticism, and I will
Okay.
put construction in there.
Constructive criticism.
Yeah. But I would just like to say that
Yes, yeah.
the $3.5 million number is a placeholder with
Right.
low confidence. Up and until we have a full scope of water quality data, we won't know yet what the treatment requirements will be for this new source. So depending,
Okay.
you know, that could go in either direction.
Okay,
Just
all
want
right,
to put that out there so that.
yep. All right, so, system connections, Judith, we will now call construction.
Distribution
Easy.
system connections. What you got, Dan?
Okay,
In previous discussions regarding the capital plan, we've discussed the backhoe replacement or concept of purchasing a smaller mid-sized loader as its replacement. Further refine the vehicle replacements included is the new 150 for treatment and replacing the 2010 150 with an F350 or 450, which would be a backup to our large service truck.
Is it the one Josh drives?
Yeah, super, what we call a super truck.
Okay.
Is it a super awesome truck or
Yes.
just a?
It has compressor,
Super duper.
electricity on it, and all the, everything that we
Bells and
need to.
whistles.
Crane?
No, the guys don't like the crane.
Really?
They bought it with a
Wow.
crane and it was taken off
Oh.
shortly after. That's actually why they had to raise the lintel on the last garage door, because when they bought it, it couldn't fit in the garage.
Oh, and it doesn't fold down?
It sits on the top of the truck box in the back.
All right, what else you got, Dan?
I think those are the big ones. I think most of the other items are transfers from the prior.
That loader though, is that the one that you had down here that you were testing out?
So that was the larger of the two in consideration. I know Jay was planning to work on getting a demo for the smaller unit, but to my knowledge, that has not happened yet.
Okay. What's the price difference between that big one and the smaller one?
I have to go back. I want to say it was like 20 or 30 grand
More.
for the bigger one. Yeah.
More, on top of the 210.
I'll have to bring it back. I have the quotes for a direct backhoe replacement, a small loader, and a mid-sized loader. So I can bring those back next meeting.
Okay.
Have you seen those other ones, the new ones with the, that'll do both skid steer and,
The
Yeah.
Mechalex, is that what they're called? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
okay, so,
do both?
this is our current capital plan, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like in another meeting or two, we have to have a list and a vote of, you know, like eliminating the 10 grand from the distribution thing, and
10 million.
10, thank you, 10 million
Throwing
from...
money around.
Yeah,
Right.
that'll pay for that other, yeah. And like, on the capital plan, I think for the tank, it says 2 million. And I'm just trying to understand if I understand the process correctly.
Yep.
Process, so we'll move that down to 175 and mush all the trucks and backhoes around to match.
Yeah.
That's all the numbers match, so.
Yeah.
In a couple of months or something, while things settle.
I guess, yeah, that's the final deliverable I'm looking to
Right.
get to.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Dan, that backhoe is over here for 125.
Right.
That doubled?
Remember, these are placeholders from
Oh, okay.
God, that was
capital
fine.
plans we adopted 5-6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. Anything else?
no. No, I'm not.
All right. All right. update, wastewater replacement project update?
Water main replacement project. So this is more specifically with respect to the area that is being constructed with the Mass DOT road replacement project. So we did receive and review and comment on 75% design drawings for that stretch of road, actually for both water and sewer. And I also got an updated 75% cost estimate. When Nancy was back before you some time ago, the estimate at that time was 3.2 million. The updated 75% estimate is now at 2.98 million. So we've shaved
Great.
off a little. And that does include a 15% contingency, so.
Any ideas of why it's such a nice reduction?
Yes, realizing the benefits of partnering with DOT. So they're, you know, as we continue to coordinate with them, they say, oh, well, you don't have to include temporary trench paving. Like, oh, well, they're, take $200,000 off. Oh, you don't need it, so it's
So all
been
you
through
have to
that.
do is buy the pipe and they put it in and take
Yeah.
care of it.
Yeah,
Works for me.
yeah,
Cool.
And they do a good job?
they have
Did
to.
you say 2.9?
2.98.
No,
Million.
I mean,
Million.
yeah.
And you said that was 75% design?
Yeah.
Great.
So that's closer to the number we were hoping for, right?
3.2 was what
Yeah.
Nancy had estimated it
Yeah.
at, so
Yeah,
I think that's,
Great.
yeah.
all right. Waste Management Act permit update?
Water Management Act.
What did I say?
Waste.
I'm on wastewater, man. Let's move along to wastewater. Water Management Act permit update.
All right, I think I might have noted before that DEP did finally reach out
Yep.
to discuss renewing the permit. In that correspondence, they did acknowledge our request to increase our permit volume. Presently, we're at 2.16 million gallons per day, which affords us about 788 million gallons per year. I had requested an increase to 2.63 million gallons, or 2.63 million gallons per day, which would bring us from 788 up to 959 million gallons per year. And what they're looking for at this point is for me to go back and recertify all of the documents that I certified in 2017 and sent them previously. So now I have to go back and rehash and see if and what they might have changed on their end in these documents. Because I went through what I had submitted and what they sent me back to recertify, and there's some additional paragraphs. You know, the documents aren't exactly the same. So while I don't expect that to change much, and what the certification is for, so with renewing our Water Management Act permit and requesting an increase in volume, we had to mitigate any capacity above and beyond what we currently had. So mitigation activities include purchase of land for watershed protection, various drainage improvement projects. So I had gone through and itemized all of this data back then to justify our requested increase in credits. So that's what I have to go back and recertify. So it's just reconfirming all the projects are valid with their guidelines. So.
Doreen?
So is this the one that, you know, should have been done years ago?
Yes.
And what is the normal length? Let's say we got this permit today, is it the 10 year? 20 years,
Yeah.
okay. Just a silly question, but when they bought your stuff in 2017 and did their work, would they not have thought of sending you an email or a letter then saying, we changed this, 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 and this?
I would have loved that. I
Just
sent them
crazy.
everything, and then they were radio silent for, you
Yeah,
know,
okay. Just
6-7 years, so.
silly me. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But this is also the permit that's going to dictate what our new water restriction criteria are.
Right.
So,
Good?
yep.
All right. New business, discussion regarding joint wastewater work group meeting with the select board. So this comes from two emails I sent to the chair of the board and Michael, our liaison, just to open up the lines of communications between our two boards and try to hash out, issues that we are seeing and may be forthcoming. So they have a scheduled meeting for September 11th, which is a Monday. Mary was reaching out to council to see us joining that meeting would be appropriate legal-wise. So we're waiting to hear back from that. If that doesn't work, their next scheduled meeting, I believe, is September 18th, which is probably 2 Mondays after that. September 18th, the following Monday. So right now, that's the tentative plan. If when we get dates, we'll pass it along, but right now, that's our hope. And I've also requested an executive session meeting with our two boards to finally, hopefully get everybody on the same page. Because I think there's a lot of discrepancies as far as, the accurate details of what's going on. So hopefully we can get that resolved. That's it.
Is there any reason why there's a legal question of whether or not we meet? I'm just curious.
The work group?
Yeah.
I don't know, they was gonna just to cover all the bases, to make sure it was a non-issue.
And I think
They meet anyway, they do a
Right.
work group meeting, so.
But also, Gary mentioned to me a possible executive, and I don't think they would have an executive session at a work session. That's just my opinion, but we'll see how it turns out, because I just don't think they would do that. It doesn't, feel right. And he was asking for an executive. We would go to the work session part anyway for a discussion on wastewater, but any of the issues pertaining to communication problems and other issues that would be done in executive, I'm just not sure if they would want that on the same night as a work session.
That makes sense.
The other thing too was Dan's, our joint meeting with Dan's step and grade increase. That was the other part of it.
And that's an executive
Yeah.
session? Yeah. May I request that when we do meet with the select board publicly, as opposed to an executive, that it is one of the meetings that's recorded?
That's
Because
not up to us.
I'm asking if you could, as our chair, request that.
I can, yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I can ask.
It just really, it disturbs me. We have so many seniors in this town. I work Monday nights very often, and it just, I think it's wrong that town business is being discussed in private.
But
It's open if you can go, but
Right.
if, it's not recorded, and this is
okay, yeah,
problematic.
I can ask, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to, devil's advocate, say that this was one that I know they've had planned for a month or two for that date as a work session, which is not recorded. So I'm just saying, I'm just giving information.
On
I'm not-
wastewater?
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm just giving information.
As an elected official
Yeah.
in this town, I find it abhorrent that our senior elected officials do not make their meetings that are public. They're open to the public, but that's very different than recording it for people to watch or listen. Well, they just need these if they don't want to be on camera.
Total agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
So one of the items, and I just put out for your consideration and thought, one of the items that was hoping to be discussed was from Sharon from the Board of Health. So one of the things that they're looking to do is establish criteria for considering extensions to the order to connect requests. So I had met with her prior to going on vacation, and we batted down some ideas, but where the Board of Health is the ultimate decision maker in granting an extension, she was hoping to gather input from this board as well as the select board in making that, developing that criteria. So that was one thing that was on the list. And I think there was an invitation to kind of toss out other items, ongoing issues, or anything wastewater related that needs to be discussed between the two boards.
Noreen?
I know one that might come up, it doesn't seem important, but it will be important if we lose it, was when the Board of Selectmen are going through their work, doing work on committees now and, you know, things like that, you know, they noticed that the last wastewater group, the wastewater support committee, no longer, you know, hasn't met since 2019. So they were moving that to an inactive status, which is fine, but I reminded our liaison, Michael, that that webpage is a treasure trove of all things wastewater from 2019 and back, you know, so this board, I know Sandy did some work on it, Leslie may have, at some point we may have to consider, you know, what documents become ours, you know, if we are going to have people calling here saying, how do I connect, what do I do, then it seems like that portion may have to come to a section of the water page, the wastewater, you know, whatever you want to call it. I'm just afraid all that stuff would get lost. And so that's something that we'll have to think about, is we don't want to take, you know, it's got stuff on there like DHY and stuff like that. We certainly don't need that, you know, on our page, but the how to connect stuff and some of the background stuff. So that's actually a lot of work to go through those things. You remember when we saved all those documents, it was what we did, Al, in that group, and Sharon, I'll give Sharon the most credit for doing it, she tried to gather everything from the 10 years prior and put it on that one page, so that's our library.
Well, I'll make sure I don't throw anything away.
Okay, yeah, don't you do that. Because also, it's not like we can get stuff easily from CDM anymore or stuff like that, so that's
all
what we,
that stuff.
yeah, so.
Another, just if I can before we move on, just one other, I think, concept that I think was hoped to be discussed at a joint meeting was, you know, what a wastewater department, the establishment and creation, because town hall doesn't acknowledge that there is a wastewater department in town.
When you say town hall, are you talking about staff, or are you talking about the Board of Selectmen, or select board? I gotta get used to saying that. Is that administration, or is
Yeah,
that
I mean,
select board?
Administration,
Slash
I
select
don't,
board?
I guess I haven't asked the select board directly if they, you know, I haven't asked them that question, but I have been told that because there's no wastewater department in the charter, there's no wastewater department.
That's great.
So other things that we asked to put on it are discussion of the assistant wastewater superintendent, where's that position? The infrastructure moving forward, infrastructure, staffing, communication with town hall. Again, I requested an executive session. What else?
There was one, you know, minor one, the Harwich Chatham IMA board, Larry
Right.
Ballantyne was, as member of selectmen, was on there, but he's since vacated the position, so we need to backfill that.
Yeah, I think we had like 4 or 5 things, I think that was it.
Is there still a similar board with DY, or that stuff is all closed?
And what about, you know, that huge monitoring system that was supposed to keep conservation law happy? I know you're doing a large portion of it, but is there a portion that should be done by the people who own the CWMP, or does it all fall under the connecting phases?
I guess I view compliance with the watershed permit
Right.
regulations. I mean, I don't know. I just say I see it as my responsibility.
All right.
I you know, because like with reporting on
Yeah.
the water side of things,
Yeah.
I'm already doing it in Pleasant Bay.
They would come to you for it anyway,
Yeah.
so I'll let that die.
Anything else, Dan? Is that, okay. Billing update. Is that why Wellesley was here for billing update?
Right when Wellesley left.
All right, we'll move on.
All right,
We'll
go
come
back
back.
to it.
We'll come back. Update on well 1, well 9, and well 10.
Yeah, we've had a big week, big few weeks. Well 9 went down the end of last month. The transformer in the pump station blew. We have another one en route. It should be here in the next week or so. Well 1, we believe the motor burnt out. It's a submersible motor. We've already got the well driller on contact. They were either trying to get out here yesterday or the day before. If not those 2 days, he was promising Monday, so I'm expecting he's actually coming down with a new motor in hand, so hopefully he can just pull it out and put the new one in and move back online. And well 10 is actually back online now. There was some electrical event out there. We lost a phase of the 3-phase power coming into the building, and it blew the VFD, but we were fortunate that we had a spare VFD on the shelf, so we were able to get that wired in and put back online. But
Doreen?
You know, I remember large companies used to keep their own spare transformers in their own inventory. Sometimes we'd work out other arrangements for where they'd store them. But is that something we would ever consider?
I have been, honestly, I've been thinking about it for the last couple of years.
See?
When we ran the we started the conduit project to get everything buried out back here, and as part of that project, I'm looking at the transformer pots at the top of the pole that look like they're from 1935.
You got it. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and thinking that, at some point these are going to go, and I know during the pandemic there was difficulty getting these devices. So yes, 100%. Hopefully we can get an electrician on board.
Yeah,
to help
that's
with
true. That would be helpful.
Because if we're going to buy new transformers, I'd like to buy ground mount and pad mount ones, and I'd like to do it as, get new ones that, as we put everything underground and then get a spare at the same time.
Yeah, great.
So,
Okay.
Lockstep.
They are probably 1935.
Yeah.
And you can do that work, it doesn't have to be the electric company?
No, we would definitely hire the electric
has to be
company,
them.
but it would, at least having it
If
on
they have
hand,
it.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We can get it done.
That's not their responsibility?
These are private in here, so.
Well, is it just in time? Building update.
Thank you.
I didn't do anything, so we want to start with the great news from Wednesday.
Do you want to open with that?
All right, so we got some great news Wednesday. The tax office is all caught up processing water bills.
Wow.
Great.
That was fast.
So the water bills were due on the
Well,
14th.
But they're caught up. That's, okay.
So you mean payments?
Yes, payments
But
have now
they
been
were due on the
processed.
14th, so how are you gonna know who paid? Since I called you, I was one of them with the late payments, so.
Yes, the tax office was behind at least 2 months in processing payments.
Does that mean getting them out the door? Or?
No, posting them to Eunice.
And in the bank account.
And
in the bank
in
account.
And in our
depositing.
bank account, and so straight across the board. And that is from online payments, lockbox payments, in-person payments, everything. And that's not only for us, but for the town, every payment for the town. Wow. So it's been a few months. And so it's caused a lot of difficulty with us because we've pretty much had to cease billing completely because we couldn't generate bills knowing that the balances were not going to be correct in the system. So that means no late fees, no miscellaneous billing, and the rest of it. So we've been on hold for a while. So we just got word on Wednesday that they are caught up. We're still working through a few issues through the online portal because the tax office just had another personnel change, and that person knew how to do it. The people remaining don't know how to do it. So, so for right now, we're just working through the last remnants of that. And as of today, it feels really good to say, I just generated our delinquent bills because they were due on the 14th. And I just generated our miscellaneous file. I usually do that a few times a month. I haven't run it since the beginning of July. So that's out the door as of today. So we're trying to get back on track. With this personnel change, we're reading in 3 weeks for the next quarterly bill in October. So we're hoping that they do get somebody else on board so that we don't have a continuation or another repeat of this issue. So it's been a very interesting year. going into last year as well. So for us, it's going to take a little while to get us back to where we used to be as far as scheduling. Because we don't want, the dates and everything to start snowballing into other bill files and, payment plans and everything associated with what we do. So it's taken a long time to get to where we are. And now that that's kind of skewed a little bit, we're just going to have to try to get back on. And hopefully, depending on the progress up there, they will sort that out so that we can continue to get back on track with our dates and our finances for generating revenue.
Wow.
How were you able to, on the tail end ones, like mine was, how were you able, if you got the information on the 20th, how were you able to tell if they were paid on the 13th or the 19th?
So we requested that they apply the payments when they receive them. Because the whole problem with doing a lump sum date is that, and back billing, is that when we do generate files, it's not the accurate date. Because when you submit a payment on the 15th, it should be noted that it was on the 15th, not the following month. So needless to say, we got a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, because people were, making their mortgage payments, they were checking their bank accounts, waiting for checks to clear. So it created this whole,
I can't understand how they could post it to the right period when they hasn't just posited the cash. But I'll let them.
I think it's when they process, they can enter the date received in Munis, so that when we go to run a report to generate.
Well, when they
fees.
process, but they hadn't deposited either.
Right.
So the cash wasn't there, but not our problem.
It's the posting date.
Yeah.
Okay.
So date received is put in.
Well, mine made it in the day before. It wasn't cash for a month.
I paid with the debit card, so it would just go immediately. I think. Maybe not. I don't know.
That's the interesting thing about bank payments, because the banks will deduct the revenue from your account, but that doesn't mean that we've received it or processed it. So it will show one amount, and it will create the appearance that it's been paid when it actually hasn't cleared because we haven't deposited it and we haven't posted it.
I better double check.
Well, everything's in now, we're thankful to say. And another aspect of it is when people pay via their bank, the bank actually issues a paper check. A lot of people think that it's just an electronic transfer into our own account, but it isn't. They actually have to send a check. And then we have to either process those payments manually if they're not properly noted, or we send it, or they're sent to the lockbox, and that's when we generate those
I'm
reconciliations.
gonna double check.
All right, thank you. Good? Good. Approved contract with GZA Geo-Environmental Inc. for new source exploration in the amount of $451,500.
If I may, I actually reached out to GZA yesterday. The quote for $451,500 was in the proposal that they provided back in March. So in discussions with him yesterday, he requested that we add an additional $50,000 as a contingency based on the drilling rates he's been seeing. So that
501?
501,500.
But that wasn't in the contract paperwork.
It
was on the cost page, yes.
And he did put it in.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I missed it?
Here.
No, I saw that.
Contingency.
I saw that.
Oh.
But I didn't see it in the contract.
I didn't see any numbers in the contract.
Well, maybe there aren't any numbers, that's why I didn't see
This?
it. Okay, is that a,
That's the first
Because the
page of the
front
contract.
page has 501, 500.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know. Okay.
So we need a motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I need to, so I gotta check with the accounting office. Last time I looked, Sandy looked, they had not put the 2023 town meeting articles in yet, so I don't have an Oregon object number. So I need to work with accounting to have them sign off as to the availability of funds and get that account entered into Munis so that we can go through that process. So I will be looking to have Tracy reach out to you for signatures once I get signed off to the finance director.
All right.
So you need the org and the object before we can sign the contract? I know you'd like to have it,
Yeah.
but
Well, my understanding, or as it was explained to me, that legally, the finance director needs to sign off on the
Right.
availability of funds, or else it's not a valid contract, so.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it doesn't matter the order in which, as long as it's all done.
right, I get you.
Superintendent's report.
All right. Staffing update, we did bring one seasonal employee on, and I do have another gentleman coming on board in September to fill the laborer/distribution position. I did have an offer out to an electrician, but unfortunately they withdrew and are staying at their current job, so I have to go back out to the street for the electrician position. I had a meeting just before I went away for vacation with DEP regarding the watershed permit. So just a quick update, but in essence, the most important thing that the town needs to do right now is file a notice of intent, which is basically putting DEP on notice that we are going to pursue a watershed permit. And once we do that, that will alleviate any concern about IA systems or the requirement to start hooking them up in 2-year time. So it was a very good meeting. I'm optimistic walking out of it. So we'll see how it goes. But in that notice of intent, we need to identify a timeline at which point we'll have all of our supporting documentation to support our actual watershed permit application. So I've tasked GHD with kind of establishing a timeline for the NOI. So that's where we're at right now. And lastly, we are looking to start flushing. Steve had mentioned beginning of October, but I'm going to see if I can push him a little earlier to the mid-late September. But just be on alert that that's going to be coming out as well. And also, well data.
Thank you for the big prints.
Yeah.
That's for Gary.
And me.
So our downward trend is softening, especially in comparison to last year. You can see, we had that big rain event on August 8th and the little hiccup that it gives us. And that decline is also having received 4.5 inches of rain in the month of August. So,
And
yeah, it keeps coming.
It's like a booster.
Yeah. But if we move to the second chart, all that rain has certainly resulted in a significant reduction in pumping. We are down to where we were at this time last year, but the last time we were at this level was 2017 for pumping volume. So we are in a wet year. Also included in the packet were just some comparisons on the month-to-date for July and August for the water system.
What's the significance of the median line on these?
I put it on there just so that you guys can kind of get a handle on what it historically has been over time.
Okay,
So, that's not a definitive year, but a combination of all the year's data. So just as a
kind of
reference
in
point.
general.
Yeah.
So, let's say, other than these last few crazy years, for 10 or 15 years before that, it might have evened out to
2016, we were above that line.
2016, you were above that
Yeah.
line. Okay,
When we were, trending up.
yeah.
Sorry, I should have shown this chart a million times. I should have explained that.
I was still working on understanding the other two lines. I've only just made my way up to the third line.
Gary, unless you have something to remind me of, that is all I have.
I don't think so. I think we covered it under the discussion regarding the joint wastewater. Commissioners report, Mr. Thompson,
I'm good, sir.
Mr. Underwood,
I'm fine, thanks.
Mr. Donahue,
I am fine.
Mr. Goff.
All set.
All right, I have nothing as well. So possibly, the next, let's see.
It seems hard to make an appointment when we have those other two pending.
I'm gone, and I won't be back until the week of the 11th. 1, 2. So that would be either the 11th through the 15th. The 11th would be tentatively the working meeting. And do we want to go with the 14th? Stick with Thursdays?
I have two answers. One is, are we better to have it on the 14th, like before we might have an executive on the 18th, but we couldn't really discuss what was on our mind in open session anyway? Or are we better to have it a week later so we could talk about what we talked about at the 18th? But of course, now I'm thinking if that was executive, we couldn't really talk about it anyway. So I don't know what to say now.
Well, I would prefer to have it on the 14th, so we could
Okay.
discuss, if we have that September 11th meeting, we could discuss that on the 14th. And
Could I,
What's on the 11th, please?
the workshop, the working meeting with the select board. joint
wastewater?
meeting.
Then Gary, will you on the agenda, whether we use it or not, put an opportunity for executive session, recontracts on the 14th?
Sure.
So that, in other words, if we're gonna have that meeting on the 18th,
Mhm.
and we want to talk about defining what's gonna go on in that meeting, but we would need a section on the agenda, and then if all the meetings have been postponed, then we just postpone the executive.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So you're saying executive on the 14th?
Yes.
Or at least a placeholder
Yeah.
for one, so.
Yeah, we'll be discussing employee negotiation.
And that way, it'll be if they're gonna go ahead and have that meeting, it'll be an opportunity to define it in executive for us, so we know what we're going into.
Before we go into executive with them.
Right. That's what I'm
Which
thinking.
wouldn't happen on the 11th.
Right.
It might,
It
and then
might.
we'd have to change anything, but I'm gonna, if I had to bet money, I'm gonna say no, but you
Yeah,
know,
because they've,
Yeah.
probably got plenty.
I just,
So stick
because
with,
look at how upset people are about not having things televised, then you start throwing in executive sessions into work sessions. I don't think, but,
well, we could schedule an executive session 2 days from now, I mean, if you wanted to.
yeah, but we don't, we could, but,
All right, so September 14th at 11:30, so work for everybody?
yeah.
All right,
September.
September. I just
I
need a
know.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have closed the meeting, we should have signed those.